The moment I stepped outside, I knew something was off. There, in my pool, floated a middle-aged woman in a wide-brimmed sun hat, lounging like she owned the place. She wasn't just drifting. She was sprawled across a neon green inflatable chair, oversized sunglasses hiding what I pictured as eyes brimming with self-satisfied arrogance. A half-empty pina colada dangled from her hand, ice melting into the clear blue water. At first, I thought I'd lost it. Had I forgotten I was hosting a pool party? Had someone listed my house on Airbnb without me knowing? Then I spotted him, Greg from 2 doors down, perched on my deck chair, slathering sunscreen on his shiny bald head like he was at some all-inclusive resort. Beside him sat Marjorie Klein, the neighborhood's resident busybody, sipping from a pineapple-shaped cup complete with a little umbrella. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. The entire HOA board was in my backyard, in my pool, uninvited. I stood there, dumbfounded, trying to wrap my head around the gall of it all. I'd always known Linda Voss, our HOA president, had an inflated sense of power, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. The same woman who once fined me for leaving my trash cans out 6 minutes late was now trespassing in my yard, soaking in my pool like a smug alligator. And the kicker? They all looked perfectly at ease, as if I were the one intruding. Linda tilted her head slightly toward me, giving me a casual nod, the kind you'd toss a waiter in a busy diner. "Oh, Mike, you're back early." Back early. I stared at her, incredulous. "Linda, what the hell is going on?" She sighed, as if my question was a petty annoyance. "We had a board meeting scheduled today, but the clubhouse AC broke down. So we figured, why not hold it somewhere more pleasant?" She waved lazily at my private backyard, like she'd done me a favor by picking my property for her unapproved retreat. I blinked twice. "You figured? Let me get this straight. You decided my pool was a stand-in for the HOA clubhouse." Linda flashed a patronizing smile, the kind you'd use on a kid who doesn't grasp grown-up logic. "Technically, we oversee all neighborhood amenities." I nearly choked on my anger. "This isn't a neighborhood amenity, Linda. This is my property." Greg, still rubbing sunscreen into his scalp, chimed in. "There's a clause in the HOA rules that lets board members inspect shared resources." I narrowed my eyes. "And what part of this is a shared resource, Greg?" He faltered, but Linda didn't skip a beat. "We needed to check the safety and condition of privately maintained amenities. It's standard procedure." She took a slow sip of her drink, unfazed. I dragged a hand down my face, trying to anchor myself in the absurdity of it all. "Linda," I said, my voice tight but calm, "are you seriously saying you're using my pool for a board meeting under the pretense of an inspection?" "Of course not," she replied, feigning offense. "The meeting's separate. The inspection's just a bonus." I opened my mouth, then shut it. There were a dozen things I wanted to say, most of which would have landed me a fine under some vague HOA civility rule. Instead, I took a deep breath. "All right," I said, forcing a smile that probably looked more like a scowl. "If you're doing an inspection, I assume you'll be done in, what, 5 minutes?" Linda waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, no hurry. The meeting's just getting started. We haven't even touched the budget yet." I stared at her. Budget discussion. In my pool. The HOA crew showed no signs of budging. Greg stretched out his legs. Marjorie flipped a page in her waterproof notebook, ignoring the fact that her pineapple drink had tipped over onto my patio cushion. Linda adjusted her sunglasses and sighed contentedly. Something inside me snapped. Fine. If they wanted a deluxe pool day, I'd give them one. Keeping my face neutral, I said, "Well, I wouldn't dream of interrupting official HOA business. Let me just activate the premium spa feature." Linda shot me a wary glance, but didn't protest as I strolled to the pool controls on my patio. With one quick twist, I cranked the heater to its max. At first, it was subtle. The water warmed up gradually, too slight for the board members to notice as they droned on about HOA nonsense. I leaned against the railing, pretending to listen as Linda rambled about fence height regulations while slowly poaching herself. Minutes ticked by. The first hint of trouble came when Greg tugged at his shirt collar and wiped his brow. "Is it just me, or is it getting hot out here?" he mumbled. Linda gave him a withering look. "It's a pool, Greg. It's supposed to be warm." I bit my lip to stifle a laugh. Oh, they had no clue. 5 more minutes passed. and even Linda started squirming on her float. She pulled off her sunglasses, blinking as sweat beaded on her forehead. "This water feels a bit." She trailed off. Admitting discomfort would mean admitting she'd misjudged. Greg, less restrained, blurted, "No, seriously, this is weird. It's like a—" He stopped, eyes widening. "Oh my God, is this boiling?" Panic erupted. Marjorie let out a shrill yelp and flailed toward the pool steps. "Ow, ow, it's burning." Linda, now wide awake, tried to keep her composure but floundered as she hurled herself off the float, slipping on the wet tiles and crashing face first into a deck chair. Greg thrashed in the skimmer net like a trapped fish. I'd never felt such pure glee. In moments, the poised HOA board turned into a soggy, sunburned mess. They scrambled to grab their stuff, leaving behind spilled drinks, drenched towels, and what looked like a stack of HOA violation forms. Linda, her hair a frizzy wreck, spun on me, fury blazing in her eyes. "This," she hissed, "is not over." I smirked. "I sure hope not." As she stormed off, I surveyed my now empty pool. Worth every degree. The HOA crew had trashed my backyard. Wet towels slung over chairs, abandoned cups bobbing in the water, a soggy violation binder slumped by the deck. It looked like a tornado of entitlement had blown through. The only thing missing was a chalk outline where Linda had tripped in her frantic exit. I exhaled slowly, basking in the aftermath of my petty revenge. Watching them flee like scalded crabs had been glorious, but I knew Linda. She wasn't one to let this go. The woman once fined someone $200 for planting unapproved daisies. If she'd go to war over flowers, she'd definitely retaliate over a pool roasting. I estimated I had maybe a day before she struck back. Sure enough, the next morning, an envelope was taped to my front door, like some hostile declaration. I recognized the HOA letterhead instantly and sighed as I peeled it off. Inside was a formal notice claiming I'd recklessly altered common property temperature settings without approval, a gross negligence violation. My penalty? A $5,000 fine. I nearly spat out my coffee. $5,000 for heating my own pool. I reread it, hunting for the punchline, but Linda was dead serious. She'd called my pool common property after barging in, but now it was my fault for tweaking it. The hypocrisy was almost admirable. A saner person might have appealed through official channels or tried reasoning with her. But I wasn't feeling reasonable. Linda had crossed the line when she turned my backyard into her personal oasis. The fine was her escalation. Now it was my move. I spent the next 2 hours doing what no rational person does willingly, reading the HOA bylaws. If Linda wanted to weaponize the rules, I'd beat her at her own game. The document was a monster, drowning in legalese, but on page 87, I struck gold, a buried clause stating, "Any unauthorized use of a private homeowner's property by an HOA board member shall be subject to financial restitution equal to damages incurred." I grinned so wide my face hurt. Linda had fined me for adjusting my pool, but the real violation was her trespassing, and this gem meant she owed me. The next day, I strolled into the HOA office with a folder in hand. Linda sat behind her desk, radiating smugness, barely glancing up. "If you're here about your fine, it's settled. Payments due in 30 days, or we'll escalate legally." I smiled, sliding my folder atop hers. "Actually, I'm here to submit an invoice." That got her attention. She frowned, pulling it toward her. "What is this?" "It's a bill," I said breezily, "for damages from when you and your crew used my property without permission." Her face darkened as she flipped through it. $10,000. Her voice pitched up. I nodded. "Let's see. Extra heating costs, pool chemical rebalancing, wear on furniture, plus emotional distress." It's all itemized. Per HOA bylaw section 6.3, unauthorized use of private property requires restitution. Honestly, I could have charged $15,000. Linda's mouth opened, then snapped shut, her face turning a furious red. "This is ridiculous." "What's ridiculous?" I shot back. "Is finding someone $5,000 for warming their own pool. But rules are rules, right?" Her jaw clenched so tight I thought she'd crack a molar. "This won't hold up." "Oh, it already has." I nodded toward the growing crowd behind me. Other HOA members had overheard and were now skimming my invoice, some smirking, others murmuring. Linda ruled with an iron fist, but she wasn't loved. Her enemies were relishing this. I leaned in, voice low. You want to play rulebook chess, Linda? I know this HOA better than you think. I'll dig up more dirt on you than you'll ever find on me. Her eye twitched. For the first time, she looked shaken. She knew I wasn't bluffing. The HOA had thrived on selective enforcement, targeting homeowners while ignoring their own slip-ups. Now I had the rules and leverage. Cornered, Linda folded. That evening, I got a letter voiding my fine and accepting my invoice, though they haggled it down to $5,000. I didn't quibble, winning was enough. A week later, Linda resigned as HOA president, citing personal reasons. Her replacement, Tom Hayes, was a breath of fresh air, fair, approachable, not a dictator. My triumph was sealed. And in a poetic twist, Tom revived an old rule Linda had once championed: mailbox uniformity. Guess who got the first fine? Linda, now just another resident, stood by her mailbox, fuming, as I watched from my porch, raising my coffee mug in a silent toast. She stormed inside. Victory never tasted so good. The neighborhood exhaled when Linda stepped down. For years, she'd run the HOA like her personal fiefdom, doling out fines like confetti and enforcing rules that only applied when it suited her. With her gone, people dared to hope. Tom was her opposite: reasonable, open, uninterested in petty power trips. For once, the HOA felt like it served us, not the other way around. But Linda wasn't one to slink away quietly. She'd lost her crown, but she wasn't done. She simmered, schemed, waited. Most would have licked their wounds after such a defeat. Not Linda. She saw it as a hiccup. Her revenge started small. A complaint about my grass being a quarter-inch too tall, a notice about my misplaced trash cans. They weren't. Whispers to neighbors that I'd nearly bankrupted the HOA. A lie meant to turn people against me. Then one morning, I found my mailbox smashed, the post splintered like someone had taken a bat to it. No proof it was Linda, but it reeked of her. She thrived on control, setting the terms, watching people squirm. Fighting her head-on wouldn't work. The way to beat Linda was to strip her of power. I knew how. Days later, I caught her leaving her house. She glared as I waved cheerfully. Morning, Linda. Gorgeous day, huh? She paused, wary of my chipper tone. What do you want, Mike? Oh, nothing, I said, stretching casually. Just wanted to thank you for keeping the neighborhood in line with all those complaints. Real commitment. Makes me wonder why you ever stepped down. Her lips thinned. I didn't step down. I was pushed out by a bunch of complainers who don't value order. I nodded, mock sympathetic. Must have been tough. And now? Just another homeowner. No authority, no sway. Just one of us. Her jaw tightened, a flicker of doubt in her eyes. I was hitting her where it hurt, reminding her she'd lost her grip in the most infuriatingly polite way. It worked. Linda could handle battles and loopholes, but irrelevance? That she couldn't stomach. I let the silence linger before adding, since you're not in charge anymore, I guess you're stuck following the same rules as us peasants now. Funny how that works. She didn't reply, but her white-knuckled grip on her car door said it all. The petty complaints stopped. My mailbox stayed upright. It wasn't a flashy win. No explosions, no grand showdown. But Linda knew I'd beaten her, and she knew I knew. The final touch came a week later at Tom's first open HOA meeting. Residents aired real concerns: parking, noise, upkeep, not petty diktats. Linda sat in the back, arms crossed, seething silently. She didn't speak, didn't fight. She just watched the HOA move on without her. As Tom thanked everyone, I saw it. The moment she realized she wasn't feared, respected, or needed anymore. Leaving the meeting, I passed her by the bulletin board, staring blankly at the minutes. Our eyes met. No fire, no smugness, just a woman who'd built her identity on control and didn't know what to do without it. I gave her a small nod, not mockery, but closure. Then I walked out into the fresh air, leaving Linda Voss behind. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt like home.